Hello and welcome everyone. I hope psychology lectures are triggering a lot of excitement and a lot of interest in you. In this lecture, we will take up a very essential question that whether psychology is a natural science or a social science. You have all traversed the journey from class 1 to class 10, and you have, after especially class 6, you were introduced to subjects like physics, chemistry, and bio, and history, civics, and geography on the other hand. So these are the two kinds of sciences. History, civics, and geography, they pertain to a domain of knowledge which is referred to as social sciences. So they belong to the social sciences. Whereas physics, chemistry, and bio, they belong to the natural sciences. Now, a very obvious question is, why the two kinds of sciences? Why do we need natural sciences and social sciences? We need natural science and social science because they both answer different kinds of questions and satisfy human curiosity in two different ways. The natural sciences, they study the natural world. Everything that belongs to matter, energy, and the interrelations between matter and energy, that is what the natural sciences study. On the other hand, everything that belongs to the social realm of existence, or everything that pertains to society, everything that belongs to what is made by human beings for themselves, that is what the social sciences study. Social, the word social comes from society. Society is something that is formed by human beings for an organized way of life. Human beings moved from hunters and gatherers to an organized and settled life. This organized and settled life has certain social norms, rules, or ways of working. Society can work only when there is a certain structure that guides the working of the society. So, society in general is a collection of people who live together according to certain norms, certain rules, and certain laws, certain prescriptions, which are agreed upon by everybody who is part of that society. This is what the social sciences study. Social sciences study all that belongs to the social realm, all that belongs to the society, all that is made by people for a better way of living, or all that pertains to the social realm of existence. So there is a natural realm of existence where there are laws of physics, there are, you know, facts such as gravitation, there are facts such as uh, traveling of the light at a certain speed. That is a fact. That is a fact of the natural world. Whereas societies, they operate according to different kinds of rules and laws, and these rules and laws and prescriptions are generally agreed upon. They are created by we, the human beings, and they are agreed upon by all the members of society. So human life has two basic realms. One is the natural, one is the realm of existence, or the part of life which is natural, which is given to us by nature. The other part of life we have created for ourselves. For example, some countries have democracy and some countries do not have democracy. So democracy is a social fact, it's a social reality, it's a part of our social realm. It is something which we have created, we the human beings have created for ourselves. This is not natural. So human life has two aspects, broadly two aspects. One is the natural aspect, which is given to us by nature, and the other is the social aspect, which is created by all of us together for a better way of living, for an organized way of living. So that pertains to the study of social sciences. In a nutshell, natural sciences study the natural world of existence, and the social sciences study the social world of existence. These two sciences, in their own ways, answer certain questions which the human beings ask. For example, natural sciences answer so many questions about space. which is a natural part of our existence, which is given to us by Mother Nature. On the other hand, the social sciences answer so many questions related to the social aspect of our existence, or related to the society. And both these realms of existence, or both these parts of life, are equally important to us. Human beings have a natural curiosity to know about the natural world as well as the social world. So these two sciences, they answer different kinds of questions, and both these kind of questions are important, and both the kind of questions are relevant because they satisfy different kinds of curiosities within the human mind. So we have learned that both the sciences, the natural sciences and the social sciences, they have different subject matter, or they answer different kinds of questions. So they study different kinds of things. Natural sciences, they have natural world as their subject matter. They study the natural world, that is matter, energy and their interrelations. The social sciences, they have subject matter as the social world. So they study the social world, that is human society and social relationships. The examples of natural sciences we have already discussed: physics, chemistry, and biology, examples of natural sciences, whereas social sciences, history and civics, is a kind of social science. Now, if you look at the last column, which is method of study, here you can see that natural sciences have a method of study which is called the hypothetico-deductive method, and the social sciences have a method of study which is called the descriptive method. These two methods we are going to do in detail when we go to the second chapter in psychology, which deals with methods of study in psychology. Here I will briefly tell you what these two kinds of methods are and how these two kinds of methods differentiate natural sciences and the social sciences. The method used by social scientists generally are descriptive in nature. Descriptive comes from description. Description refers to describing something, an event, a phenomenon, or a place. If you go somewhere and then you write a record, then you write a report on where you went, or a travelogue. So when you write a travelogue, what do? You describe the place. You talk about, or you discuss the features of that place, the scenery which you saw at that place. You describe how you felt at that place, whether you felt happy or you felt bored or you felt excited. So you try to describe that place, you try to describe your experience, you try to add features to your report of that place, to your report of your experience of that place. That is what we generally understand by descriptive methods. Now coming to hypothetico-deductive method, this is the method which differentiates natural sciences from social sciences. If you look at this table, natural sciences and social sciences differ on the basis of their subject matter. So what they study, they differ on what they study. What they study differentiates natural sciences from social sciences. How they study, or the method that they use, also differentiates natural sciences from social sciences. Social sciences methods are generally descriptive in nature, whereas natural sciences follow a certain method which is called the hypothetico-deductive method. This method is also called the scientific method or the experimental method. Before we go into the details of the hypothetico-deductive method, let us just recapitulate what we have understood so far. We have understood that there are two kinds of sciences: natural sciences and social sciences. Natural sciences and social sciences differ from each other because of the subject matter, because of what they study, their subject matter. They also differ from each other on the basis of the method of study. Social sciences use different kinds of methods to study their subject matter. Natural sciences are differentiated from social sciences on the basis of the use of a method which is known as the hypothetico-deductive method. Now, let us go into the details of this method. In order to understand what is meant by hypothetico-deductive method, let us first take up a question and then see how this method helps us answer this question. So the question we start off with is, does desire to learn facilitate learning? So the question is, we want to answer this question. The question is that whether the desire to learn in a person facilitate the process of learning. If I have a strong desire in me to study psychology, to know about psychology, would that desire lead to a better learning on my part? Would I be a faster learner? Would I be a better learner? So, does my desire to learn psychology facilitate my learning? This is the question that we want to answer. Now, you can see that on the left hand side of this question, we have a box called theory. We later on understand what we mean by theory. Let us first assume that the people around us, they tell us that the desire to learn facilitates learning. So our theory is that the desire to learn facilitates learning. Okay, so there are people around me who tell me that if a person has a strong desire to learn, the person will be a better learner at something. Whatever the person desires to learn, the person has to be a better learner at it. This is the theory, because this is what the people around me are telling me. So this is my theory. So I start my question from this theory, and my question again is that, is it true that desire to learn facilitate learning? Now what do? I start off with, in order to answer this question, what I will do, I'll first answer it according to my hunch. For example, my hunch is that yes, if I feel that yes, desire should facilitate learning, then I will have that as my starting point. So I asked a question first, which was, does desire to learn facilitate learning? Then I gave an answer to it based upon my hunch, or based upon my inclination, on my preference, So I said yes, desire to learn facilitates learning. Then what do? The next step is I gather data. The third step is that I gather data. What do? I gather data in order to see, I talk to people, I gather data in order to see whether my answer to my question is correct or not. So I talk to many people and try to find out whether their desire to learn has led to a better learning of something or not. So I gather data, I talk to people, I make them answer questions on a paper. By whatever means, I have to gather data in order to see whether my answer to my question is true or not. Now, the data that I have gathered can point in two directions. One, it can point towards the confirmation of my answer to the question. It can confirm my hunch that yes, desire facilitates learning. Or the another option could be that it points out to something else. For example, my data points out that interest in the subject facilitates learning. So it is not only desire but also interest in the subject. I may be having a desire to know about psychology, but if I do not have the interest in psychology, if my interest lies more in some other field, then I will not be able to learn psychology. So when I gather data, my data tells me that there is something else which is more important than desire. So now what I will do? Now if my data points towards option A, or the desire facilitates learning, then what happens? The theory with which I started, that is confirmed. So I started off with a theory that one's desire to learn facilitates learning. I asked a question, I gave a tentative answer, I gathered data, then my data points out to the fact that desire facilitates learning, which means that the arrow goes towards the theory, which means that theory stands confirmed. If in case my data does not point to this direction and points to the other direction, which says that interest in the subject facilitates learning, then what happens? Then I get another question to answer. So then what I will do? I will go back to step 1. I'll again ask a question. With this finding, I'll ask another question and say, does interest in the subject facilitate learning? Again, I'll give a tentative answer that yes, interest facilitates learning, or no, interest does not facilitate learning. It can be either way. It can be yes or it can be no. Whatever it is, we have to test whether it is true or not. So I will again then have to go to the question, again frame a question, a different question this time, again give a tentative answer, a hunch, a different hunch, and then gather data and then again see whether this question, this different question, this new question, second question of mine is confirmed or not. This is the process of hypothetico-deductive method. This is the process which we follow when we use the hypothetico-deductive method, and this is the scientific method or the experimental method which is mostly followed by the natural sciences. So let's now revise what we have learned about the hypothetico-deductive method through the example which we took in the last slide. The hypothetico-deductive method starts off with a question. So you can see at the top we have ask a question. Now, where does this question come from? In the hypothetico-deductive method, we assume that there is always a theory. So what is a theory? Theory is a set of statements explaining a complex phenomenon with the help of interrelated propositions. So theory has multiple propositions or multiple statements. Okay, so these statements are interrelated with each other, and these interrelationships, they explain a certain phenomenon. Okay, for example, you all must have heard about the Big Bang Theory. Now, Big Bang Theory explains how this universe came into existence. So, there are multiple statements in this theory which are interrelated to each other, and they explain the complex phenomenon of how the universe came about. So, this is one of the theories which explains the evolution of the universe. So, this is what we mean by theory. A theory is a set of statements, interrelated statements, which help us understand a certain phenomenon, just as the Big Bang Theory, with certain statements which are interrelated to each other, help us explain how the universe came into existence. So, hypothetico-deductive method starts off from a theory. So, there is a theory from which there comes a question. It is very interesting to note that theories explain phenomenon, but they do not explain it fully. So there is always a gap in every theory. So no theory is a complete explanation of any phenomenon. That is why we call it a theory. So theories explain phenomenon, but they are not the endpoints. They offer lot of gaps, they offer lot of scope for further research or further questioning. So from a theory, a researcher who is following a hypothetico-deductive method may ask a question. To answer this question, the researcher will then propose a hypothesis. Now, what is a hypothesis? Hypothesis refers to a tentative solution to your question. Hypothesis is a tentative answer to a question. So, it's a hunch. When you ask a question, somewhere you have a hunch. Probably this could be the reason why this is happening like this. So, this is called a hypothesis. Hypothetico-deductive method, as the name suggests, starts from a hypothesis. You first ask a question, then you hypothesize an answer, then you give a tentative answer. The next step is to gather data. Now, what do you gather data for? You gather data for the answer that you have given as a tentative explanation to your question. So there was a question, then there is a hypothesis which is a tentative answer, and then you gather data in order to answer that question. The data that you have gathered then would tell you whether it supports the theory from which the question emerged or it points to some other direction. If it supports the theory, the theory stands confirmed. So the theory becomes more consolidated, much more stronger than before, because it is confirmed by the data that you have gathered. If your data points in a different direction, it means the theory needs to be revised. For this, you need to again go through the same process. You need to ask a different question now, again propose a hypothesis, gather data, and then again see whether the data supports the theory or it is giving you an alternate explanation, a different explanation from that provided by the theory with which you started in the beginning. I know it is a bit abstract for you people, and also because it is new to you people, it might feel a little difficult to grasp. But in case you find it difficult to grasp, don't panic. We are going to return to this when we do chapter 2 on the methods which we use in psychology. So we are going to come back to this hypothetical deductive method in when we do our chapter 2. So in case there is doubt or confusion at this stage, don't panic, just hang on there, and we are going to return back to it, and things will be clear as we go ahead with the course. Now coming to psychology, whether psychology is a natural science or a social science. Interestingly, psychology is both a natural science and a social science. Why? Let us answer this question now. Let us first take up why psychology is considered a natural science. Psychology is considered a natural science because of the following reasons. One, because psychology uses the hypothetico-deductive method or the experimental method to know about mental processes and human behavior. Two, psychology lays emphasis on objectivity. What is objectivity? Objectivity refers to a consensus or agreement on definition and measurement of a concept. For example, I want to study the effect of desire to learn or motivation. We call it motivation in psychology. Desire to learn, we call it motivation. So this is a concept, motivation. I want to study whether motivation influences learning or not. So motivation is a concept which I am using. So there has to be a consensus and agreement on the definition of motivation. Before I start to study the effect of motivation on learning, I have to define motivation in a way which is agreed upon by others in my community or by other psychologists in my community. So there has to be a definition of the concept which we want to study. In psychology, when we study or when we do research, we define the concepts in objective manner. What is objective manner? We define the concepts in a way which is an agreeable definition of the concept, a definition which is agreed upon by psychologists in general. So I have to define, because in psychology we have to follow the criterion of or the condition of objectivity. I have to define motivation and learning, whatever I want to study, I have to define it in objective ways, in ways which is agreed upon by others. I cannot have my own meaning of motivation. I have to start with motivation as motivation is defined in psychology in general. Okay, so this is what we mean by objectivity. And when it comes to measurement, even measurement in psychology is objective. We measure attributes of human behavior and mental processes in objective manner. So we have an objective parameter of measuring mental characteristics. Okay, just as we have objective scale to measure height, we have an objective scale to measure weight. Similarly, we have objective scales to measure mental processes and mental qualities of human beings. It's very interesting to know this, and we'll be studying about measurement of human qualities in class 12. So it is going to be an interesting journey henceforward. So psychology is a natural science because psychology adheres to the criterion or the condition of objectivity. Psychology is a natural science because psychology follows the hypothetico-deductive approach. Psychology is a natural science also because it follows the evolutionary approach. Many of the psychological processes are understood through the evolutionary approach. Evolutionary approach comes from biology, and evolutionary approach pertains to evolution. So, just as in biology, we consider human evolution, we consider many processes in terms of their role in adaptation of the human being to the environment. For example, human beings used to move on four limbs, and then gradually they became Homo erectus and we began walking on two limbs. So, this is an evolutionary approach. This is how evolution explains the changes which took place in the bodies of human beings. So, this evolutionary approach is applied to many psychological concepts such as aggression and attachment. So, psychologists look at emotions such as attachment and aggression in evolutionary perspective, or they look at how attachment and aggression have helped human beings adapt to the natural surroundings. For example, the human being had to be aggressive in nature. Aggression became an instinct of the human being. Why? Because the human being had to survive in forests among animals of all kinds and had to hunt for their food and fight with animals of all kinds. So, that is how aggression came to be instilled in human beings as an important instinct. Instincts help any species, to survive in their natural world. So, human beings have aggression in them, and aggression is looked at by psychologists in the evolutionary perspective, which tells us that aggression has helped in the survival of the human race. So, it has an evolutionary purpose. This is one of the perspectives, the evolutionary perspective, which is applied to psychological processes or mental processes such as aggression and attachment. We will be learning about these processes in detail in class 11 as well as in class 12. Now, let us consider why psychology is called a social science. I told you that psychology is both a natural science and a social science. Natural science, we have understood why it is called a natural science. Let us now consider the reasons why psychology is considered a social science. Psychology is considered a social science because psychology studies human behavior in socio-cultural context. Now, what is socio-cultural context? Socio-cultural context comes from two words: socio, which comes from social, cultural, which comes from culture. So, socio refers to the social relations among members of society, and culture refers to ideas, beliefs, customs, traditions, or a way of life which is practiced by a particular society. That is the culture. Now, socio-cultural context refers to the whole physical, social, and cultural situation in which a human being is placed. So, when we study human behavior, we try to study human behavior in the context from which it is coming. If I want to understand you as a person or any psychological process within you, I have to place you, I have to situate you, I have to locate you in the socio cultural context from which you are coming. So, if I want to understand any aspect, for example, if I want to understand how people of your age learn, so I have to see which age you belong to, which cultural background you come from, which social background you come from, how educated your parents are, what kind of family background you have, what is your religious background, what is your economic background, what is your educational background, how educated your parents are, whether you are economically affluent or not, whether you belong to a family which is facing certain kind of economic problems or you belong to an affluent family. I have to see which culture you are coming from. Are you coming from an urban place or you are coming from a rural place? Are you coming from a village? Are you coming from a town? So all these factors comprise your socio-cultural background. All the social environmental, and cultural factors which might impact your being are referred to as socio-cultural context. So when we study human beings in psychology, we try to see psychological processes from the point of view of the cultural and the social background from which the person we are studying is coming. So we locate people in their socio-cultural backgrounds. This is what we understand by socio-cultural context. To understand socio-cultural context a little more, imagine a child studying in class 11 in a village, in a remote village of UP, and imagine yourself who is studying in a town like Kanpur. Imagine another child who would be studying in class 11 and studying psychology in a metro like Bombay or Delhi. These are the three socio-cultural contexts which are very different from each other. A metro is different from Kanpur. Kanpur is different from a village in UP. You can very well imagine how different the society and culture of these three places would be. Okay, so this is what we understand by socio-cultural context. Psychology is a social science because it studies human behavior and mental processes in different socio-cultural contexts. So I hope you have now understood why we call psychology as both a natural science and a social science. Psychology belongs to both natural science and a social science. Psychology is a natural science because it adheres to objectivity, it follows the hypothetical deductive method, and it follows an evolutionary approach borrowed from biology. Psychology is a social science because psychology studies human behavior in socio-cultural context. That is all for today's lecture. Thank you. Happy learning. Psychology is a natural science because it adheres to objectivity, it follows the hypothetical deductive method, and it follows an evolutionary approach borrowed from biology. Psychology is a social science because psychology studies human behavior in socio-cultural context. That is all for today's lecture. Thank you. Happy learning.